It's time for this week's episode of Brandon's Sports Talk.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the USA's Olympian snowboarder, Faye Gulini. How are you doing today?
I am doing very well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get into professional snowboarding?
Yeah, I started snowboarding at a young age. I am the youngest of 5. And so I've just wanted to, all my older siblings had switched from skiing to snowboarding. Being the youngest, I wanted to follow suit. So I begged my parents to let me do that. And then eventually, I think like a year or two later, when I was 8, they got me my first snowboard for my birthday. I loved it. And it was kind of like, from the beginning, it was a dream of like, oh, I want to go be professional. But it was so far off at that point. It was the same as like wanting to be an astronaut. I didn't really think I would ever get there. And then I would say around like 14 or 15 years old, after I had been competing for several years, started getting, quite successful. That's when I realized I can do this on a professional level if I really dedicate my time, my energy, and I don't cut corners, and I dive full in, at which point I did, and I moved to Colorado and started attending alternative high school that allowed me to go snowboarding in the morning, and then at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon I would start school, and I wouldn't get off until like 6 or 7 at night. And so that's when I knew I could actually attain that goal.
What was it like starting at such a young age, snowboarding at the age of 10?
I think good. I feel like you at that age, you're so rubbery, you can get away with because it's not forgiving, especially at the beginning. You're falling really hard all the time. Your wrists, your tailbone, like everything it's miserable. So I think had I not started so young, and also learning my body and letting snowboarding become second nature, I feel like had I not started so young, that wouldn't have been so fluid and so easy. And I probably wouldn't have become an Olympic athlete, or especially not a 4-time Olympic athlete.
What was it like going through college and learning on the college level of snowboarding?
It was challenging. I would say most of my counterparts, especially like Olympic athletes in ski and snowboard disciplines, they don't attend school. It's very demanding. You don't really have time outside of your sport, because it is a full-time job. You're in the gym, you're working on your sponsorships, you're booking travel, you're on the hill sometimes 8 hours a day. You don't have a lot of freedom, and then you're sacrificing relationships because you are traveling the world. So when you're home, you want to go back to your family and your friends and your boyfriends and whatever it is, but then you've got exams or other things going on that you need to be present for. For me, I felt like it was the right move because it made me appreciate snowboarding so much more, and I never burned out when a lot of my counterparts did, because it was a treat. It was always my treat. Snowboarding was my my fun thing, and then my education was my work. So I didn't have to treat snowboarding like it was my career, when in fact it was. But yes, it was challenging, and I'm grateful I did it, but I am so glad it's over.
What was it like in 2011 getting the first start going to the World Cups?
So I actually started World Cups, I think, in 2008. I think my first World Cup, I was 15 years old, maybe 16. I think the youngest age you can be to race World Cup. And I was super excited to go. And I was so successful on, the stage below World Cup level, like 4-star events. And so I thought, oh, I'm winning all these events. I'm going to go to a World Cup and I'm going to win it. There's no way I won't win it. I've been winning everything. And I got to my first World Cup, and it was so different. The features were 3 times the size of any features I had been racing on. And despite that, I was like, okay, this is fun. This is great. and I got last place. So it was interesting. It was a big learning curve, getting comfortable with those big features. But everything was so fine tuned at that level that it took me a decade to even be competitive in it. Maybe not a decade, but I would say 7 years. So it wasn't like I could just walk on and win like I thought I could. And I'm glad I didn't, because it made me a much better snowboarder.
How was it like, obviously, going to the World Championship in 2013, 15, and 17?
It's cool. I mean, making a World Championships team, like even qualifying for that team, is almost as challenging as qualifying for the Olympics. So being named to that team, you get that same like gratification and validation that you're up there. You're top 4 in your country. You're probably top 20 in the whole world. And my first World Championships was really exciting. I didn't think I would qualify for that, and when I did, it was like surprising and shocking, and I was so excited. And then it showed up, and I was in over my head. But as I went on with my career, I became a competitor, and then a medal challenge contender. So it was interesting how different each one of my World Championship experiences was. But even like this last one that I just did in 2020, I qualified first. So they like seed us based on if we time trial the course alone, and then based on that time is how you're seated. And so I was the fastest on the course alone. So I felt, like I went from barely making these teams to being the fastest down the course. So it was cool to have my snowboarding evolve over time, and I'm moving in the right direction.
What was that feeling like the first time you made the Winter Olympics team in 2010?
Unreal. Like I thought I had made it, but I didn't really know the process so well. I was so young. I was 17. And I was just kind of sitting and waiting to get the call, and wondering, like, and coming up with every reason that they could tell me that I wasn't going. And there wasn't many, but of course I believed them. I was like, they're not going to call me. They're not going to call me. And I was sitting at my desk in my father's house, and my phone rings, and it's my coach. And I knew it was the call. I just didn't know what he was going to tell me. And so I'm like shaking. I'm shaking. And then I answer, and I'm like, hi. And his first thing is, hi. And then he said, how would you feel if I told you were going to go compete in the Olympics? And that's when I was like, I made it. And it was super emotional for me. And even cooler to call my father and tell him, like, I'm going, we're going. Because having, his support my whole life, and he was equally as excited and happy for my success. And it was really, really cool.
Of course, once you got that first Olympic rings jersey, what was that feeling like of getting put on that Team USA and having the Olympic rings on you?
Unreal. Like it's something that you really can't put into words. I would argue though that the most surreal moment is the opening ceremonies. It wasn't necessarily being in the jersey. It wasn't being at the top of the course. It wasn't the border cross, because that I was so familiar with. What I wasn't familiar with was walking into a stadium of 80,000 people that were there to celebrate you. Like our sport is so small, and it's super unique, and most very dominant in Europe. So we have less than one event in the US every 2 years. So we don't have this massive following, because it's hard for viewers to connect with us and then follow our career, because they don't see us ever. So walking into that stadium and that energy that just was radiating, and it was so big scale. I think that was like the big moment of like, I made it. I matter, and people care to watch. And that was really, really an incredible moment.
What was that feeling like 4 years later, going in 2014 back to the Olympics?
Different. I would say for me, and I don't know if everyone feels this way, but every Olympics has been so different than the last, and so different from the next. My first one, I was so happy just to be there that there was no pressure. None of me felt like any pressure to perform. Like I was just happy to be there, and I was lucky to be there, and I had my whole family there, and everything was just cloud nine. 2014 was a little different though, because now you had gained a small following, and people think that if you've gone once, you better go back and get a medal. You know, if you're going for your second time, you better be getting a medal. And so I had a lot of pressure that next time, and a lot of it I think I put on myself. But it was much harder to perform under that pressure. And despite that, though, everything worked out quite well. That was actually my best Olympic result. In 2014, it was fourth place. So I was one away from that podium spot. And a lot of people asked, like a lot of interviews I did, they asked, "Are you disappointed?" And I was like, "I just got fourth place in the Olympics. There's nothing I'm disappointed about." Had you asked me if I was disappointed, if I got that same result, 2 Olympics later, I would have said probably yes. But at that point in my career, that was incredible.
What was that like, obviously, traveling the world and going to Japan in the 2018 Olympic?
So in 2018, we were actually in Pyeongchang. That was South Korea. That was wild. That was like every Olympics, they're always like, because they were in Russia, like we have so much to worry about. We need to, follow this really strict red tape and make sure we're, within all these boundaries, and, anything could happen. It's so scary. And then Pyeongchang was like supposed to be twice as scary and twice as threatening, and we don't know what's going to happen. And I wonder what the infrastructure is going to be like. And, we don't know what to expect, but they did such an incredible job. Everything was great. Fortunately, we were able to go like the year before for the test event. We were familiar with the course, the terrain, the snow, even the lodging. And so it wasn't, that as shocking and as uncomfortable as I think a lot of people might think.
What's that like, obviously, having a test event for the Olympics and preparing yourself for what you're going to be apparent, what's going to happen on the day of the Olympic?
Good and bad. I think going to the test event is always really exciting. Every athlete's way more high strung than they are at any other World Cup race, because they're like overanalyzing it. This is the Olympic course. I need to know this course better than I've ever known any course in my life. I need to perform, incredibly on it, whatever. But that feeling can go both ways, where I feel like if you do really well on that test course, then you kind of have this chip on your shoulder of like, okay, I'm going to go win the Olympics. Like, I know this course favors me. I'm good on this course. Like, I'm going to be great when it comes Olympic time. But on the counter, if you do bad and you have a bad result or a bad finish, or you don't like this course, or it doesn't favor your snowboarding, then you have that weighing on you of like, I'm going to go to the Olympics and do bad. Like, this course doesn't favor me. And so then you get in your head, and I think that you can kind of force those outcomes based on that, your mental state. So it's good and bad. If it favors you, if you feel confident, great. If it doesn't and you are lacking confidence, not so great.
Of course, what was this previous Olympics in Beijing like for you?
Very challenging. I would say it was my most challenging Olympic day experience. We had a lot going on, from just the course to the pandemic to the plumbing and infrastructure and snow and vert and things that really challenged me as an athlete. And then outside of that, like, couldn't have my family there. That was the first time that my father didn't come watch me compete at the games. It was hard to not get to share that experience with him and have that support from him. We had allegations going around, and my team was like under an investigation. So we were talking to lawyers, and there was just a lot of stress. And for me, I knew that was going to be my last Olympics. And if I didn't do it then, I would never have the chance to get that medal that I thought that I deserved. And I still think that I deserve. And so it was like so much pressure, and I don't know. It was difficult. I mean, I'm talking like sleepless nights over and over again. And but hey, if my biggest downfall is that I I didn't win the Olympics, then I think I'm doing all right.
Of course, as you talked about this being your last Olympics, going into the Olympics, what were some of your preparation like for this being your last Olympics?
I think it stays pretty consistent. I mean, we're training all summer long, we're training all winter long, we're trying to expose ourselves to as many courses and features as we can throughout the season. We're hardly coming home at all, so it's a little bit more dense with the training and competition schedules. Um, Obviously, qualifying becomes an issue. Like, just because you've been to an Olympics in the past doesn't mean you're qualified. Doesn't mean you just get to walk onto the team. You have to qualify. So the first like few months you spend stressing about qualifying, and then you qualify and you have this like relief breath of like, I made it. And then you're like, I haven't made it anywhere. Like the real challenge is getting through that finish line in first place. um Time and like each heat. So it's similar to preparation in the past, but Olympic seasons and the year before Olympics are always much more dense with that stuff.
Of course, what were some of your favorite memories and moments in this previous Olympics, and what was it like going down the slopes?
I would say watching my teammates' success. We had 2 gold medals in our discipline, and that was really cool. I mean, if I'm not going to do it, I would rather someone from my team than someone from a different country do it. And so it was really cool to see, these athletes' dreams be made, and to see that on such an intimate level. When you travel and compete with these people for 10 or 15 years, and you see their struggles and you see their injuries and you see them overcome those injuries, and kind of just the whole spectrum of being an athlete, and then having them, reach that top goal, that top podium is really emotional. And so I think that was probably my favorite part of the games. I had a lot of like, fun card games with my teammates, and a lot of like, it's always fun to be there with the other athletes from other disciplines that we don't really see outside of the Olympics. But that was like also very, very restricted and limited because of the pandemic. So
Of course, what was that feeling like of getting to put on the Olympic jersey and the Olympic rings for the last time in this previous Olympics?
hard, very hard. I have fallen so in love with the sport that I do, the people that I do it with, the experiences, the travel, the lifestyle. Knowing that it's coming to an end is super emotional. It's 15 years of my life, better half of my life, and so knowing that this might be the last time, which I don't think it'll be the last time I race. I think I'm going to do another season or two, but I won't do another Olympic cycle, a 4-year cycle. But I mean, it's a roller coaster. You're so grateful that you're there, and you're so proud to represent your country. But it's hard to know that it'll be the last time.
Who are some of the snowboarders that you looked up to getting started into the sport?
Back then, starting the sport, like Hannah Teeter, I think had just won gold. And she was so relaxed about it. I just loved her energy, and her like, she was kind of like, whatever, I won gold, I'm a good snowboarder. She was so mellow and entertaining. I always thought she was really good. Even, I mean, Shaun White, who doesn't look up to Shaun White? He was, especially now, I look up to him more now, as he's had such an like long successful career in both skateboarding and snowboarding. And I think as an athlete, he's one of the best that ever was. But yeah, probably those two mostly.
Of course, what is it like obviously competing with Shaun White and Jamie Anderson?
So I don't compete against them. So I don't really have to worry about them as like competition. So it's easy to like compete with them or around them, and have, be super excited for their success and get to watch, them get their second, third, fourth Olympic gold medal. But yeah, I guess, and also because we don't overlap with them that much, it's really such a treat to get to do so at the Olympics, and watch their success on such a like close level.
How does it feel to obviously have Olympian behind your last name and know all the hard work has paid off?
It's great. I feel like as I think about transitioning into life after sport, um, being 30 now and not having, much work experience or, other, I'm like, my experience is pretty strictly snowboarding. It's nice to feel like I have a little bit of a competitive advantage because at least that credential tells whoever that I'm hardworking and I'm motivated and I'm dedicated and I'm willing to put it all on the line, to achieve those goals. And so, um, when it comes to like trying to find another job or another career, I feel like it's carries a lot of weight to say you're a 4-time Olympian. So it's nice.
Of course, what is that transition going to feel like? And what is that transition like going from being an Olympian snowboarder to getting out of the snowboarding and going into corporate world?
I don't know. I've done for the past 4 years part-time income taxes for a low income tax clinic, and it's been really cool and a really great experience. Um, but I just don't know if that like office 9 to 5 corporate lifestyle is one for me. There's things that I love about it, but sitting in an office and being inside and kind of like stuck in these walls, it's not good for my mental health. I think I've built this lifestyle of like being outside so much and constantly moving and constantly changing my environment and not having routine and I think moving into what comes next, I'm going to need to find something that's has travel and change, ever changing. So it's definitely going to be a little bit challenging, but I'm sure I'll find something that I love.
What advice would you give people looking to go into snowboarding?
Love it. If you don't love it, I don't think you'll be successful. I think success is loving every minute of what you're doing. And it shows in your snowboarding, it shows in your results. Those that treat it like a career or a job or a profession, they end up burning out. They end up like putting too much pressure on themselves. And I feel like that doesn't produce results. So if you don't love it, don't do it. And if you love it, just keep loving it and you will be successful.
What advice would you give those people looking to go into the Olympics for the first time or multiple times like you did in snowboarding?
Make sure to have something else outside of sport. Because I think especially at an Olympic level, people let that become their identity, and it makes leaving sport very scary. And it's gonna happen. Like, you can't be an athlete forever. And I see a lot of people struggle very, very much leaving sport because it's their whole identity. They have nothing outside of sport. They have no other hobbies. They have no other interests. They have no education or credentials. They have no work experience. And I think that for me, that's like the most important takeaway from, going to school and doing internships and working in tax is I'm not so afraid of leaving sport because I know that there's somewhere out there that I can fit in. There's something out there for me that outside of snowboarding. And so I would recommend that to anyone who's going to pursue an Olympic career.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Instagram is at Faye Gulini, and that's FAYEGULINI. And that's the same as my Twitter is the same, and then my Facebook is the same as well, Faye Gulini. All very straightforward. I don't TikTok yet. I think I'm a little old for it, but if I do, it'll be the same handle.
Thank you again, Faye Gulini, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as you begin this new stage in your career.
Thank you.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Faye Gulini, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, Share and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.